Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. So let's begin. AAL MICS stands for AI Accelerator Lab. We present Major Innovative Constructive Showcase, and this is a recurring interactive showcase that spotlights breakthrough work from founders and innovators in AI and adjacent creative fields. So each session is designed to foster exposure, meaningful connections, and knowledge sharing. So today we're very lucky to have Uttam today. And Uttam is the founder and CEO of AVETE, a construction-focused AI startup that focuses on building vision and language AI systems to improve safety, productivity, and compliance at job sites. A University of Tokyo trained civil engineer with years of experience in the Japanese construction industry, he is transforming unused CCTV, drones, and site footage into proactive safety intelligence and helping the industry shift from reactive incident response to predictive risk prevention. So very, very fascinating project and company that you have there. So, Uttam, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for this nice introduction. Yeah, you summarized what we do and what we stand for really well. Yeah, thank you.
So please tell me a bit more about, let's do a bit of chit chat. Please tell me more about your day to day. You live in Japan. You've been in Japan for how long now? Did you grow up there?
No, I've been in Japan for like 10 years. I did my bachelor's in India. Then in India, we have like long summer breaks. So at that time, I decided to come to Japan for a short-term internship. And yeah, after that, like after coming to Japan, after studying, doing my internship, it was an amazing experience. So when the chance came to come here for a bit more long term, I decided to come here for my master's. And rest is basically just a normal journey. I come from a very construction focused background. I have a bachelor's in construction. Then I did my master's in remote sensing, which is a part of civil engineering. Luckily, remote sensing introduces machine learning and computer vision very well to the civil engineering stream. That's how I got into this area of combining the civil engineering as well as machine learning. And yeah, it has been really fascinating last 10 years.
Amazing. I think you're very modest about coming to Japan and attending UOT. Like University of Tokyo is really a top university. And I've heard that it's been extremely selective and only the elites go there. And I'm sure you had to learn Japanese as a second language or as a third language. So that journey, it really proves that you really wanted to have your life in Japan and you really wanted to do something, ambitious there. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, actually, like Japanese is more like the fourth language for me
Oh.
because from India, India is a place of like multiple languages, right? So I already
Mm.
spoke like three languages in India and then like coming to Japan. That was like one challenging piece, basically learning Japanese. But the good thing about University of Tokyo education system is their programs are fully in English. They have like master's program that are completely in English. So we are not really forced or leaned into learning Japanese as much. However, of course, like once you start talking to people who are not from university, who are, more from the industrial background, more from the construction sites, then of course having the language ability is of course like really interesting. As per the challenge, actually like Japanese people are modest. And in last 10 years, I have tried to convert myself to be a bit more Japanese in my behavior as well. That's how the modesty sort of comes in. But yeah, the journey has been a lot challenging at sometimes, right? Like the sales in Japan is always tricky. Language ability gets tested time and time again. But at the same time, like the benefits you have, like since like as you mentioned, University of Tokyo is like one of the top universities in the world. So if you go to a meeting, if you tell people it has a different gravitas, right? So that plays the university card does play at times. Yes.
I bet. And can you tell me more about how it grew into what you're doing now today? You went, sure, it's already an amazing journey that you started your life now in Japan 10 years ago. And I'm guessing not all of your classmates have decided to do something like AVETE. I'm sure a lot of them have gone into a commercial contractor or subcontractor and they work, a 9 to 5 or I don't know, perhaps longer hours. Yeah. But you've chosen something different. So you're already a very different character coming into the society and you want to do something that's also even more different to the normal or the typical route. Can you also tell
Yeah.
us about your decision to do that?
Yes, so startup was always something that I wanted to do actually from a very early
Okay.
age. So yeah, that was always something that is fascinating, like making something such a unique product that has a huge value in terms of what it can provide to the market. That's always have been like super fascinating for me. Then of course, like during my university days, like in my lab, I cannot really tell you about the entire like all other students as well, but in
Mm,
my lab we had this very open culture of innovation.
mm,
So even the research topics were a lot more like flexible, like how we pick the topic, how much of impact it can have to the society. Actually, like
mm,
that was the main reason of like why I came to Japan. Like I fell in love with my lab in the beginning because the culture, the aura around my professor, it
mm,
was huge at that time. And
mm,
even my professor, he after retiring from University of Tokyo, he started his own company. So the lab was basically built around this culture that if you have the vision, if you have the product in mind that can help the
mm,
society, don't really get stuck in the 9 to 5 routine. Even like my professor used to say like really a funny thing about PhDs and masters as well. He used to say like, masters or PhDs, they are basically like getting passports. You should not spend so much time getting passports. The target of getting the passport is to travel the countries, right? So you should spend more time on actually traveling the world rather than focusing a lot more on getting the passport itself.
I love
So
that.
yeah, yeah, so that's the journey I was dreamt of in my university days as well, and that's why. But like, of course, like this the product that the market like that we're building from Avete, it's a very niche market, and I
Mm,
needed a lot more time to understand the market itself. And from my lab, actually, there are like multiple companies that are coming off from my lab itself. It's not
mhm.
Avete is not. I think there are somewhere like 3 to 4 startups that came from my lab. So it has, yeah, yeah. So like that lab was basically that journey itself that sort of like pushed us to think out of
Mm,
the box.
mhm.
Yes.
I love the attitude, get the passport, then get going, go and do
Yeah.
something about it, right? I love that. So maybe some of our audience don't know, but we've met in person before
Yes.
in Japan at Build Worlds, and I think we listened to each other's presentation. Build Worlds for me in Tokyo was such a unique experience. I think it was great and in some ways such great exposure to see so many different stakeholders from investors to potential clients, of course, like contractors and subcontractors and all kinds of leaders in the same room. And then to be able to present to them was such a privilege. So I remember when you came on stage and you presented, you did it in such a very fluid way and very confident as well. And I think we briefly spoke, I can't remember if it was before the presentation or after that we thought we should definitely continue our discussion with each
Mhm.
other. How was your experience at Built Worlds?
It was amazing. It was very unexpected because Built World is generally they have a lot more. If you remember, they had a lot more companies non-Japanese, and I think I
Mm,
was the youngest startup there. So yeah, it came out of nowhere because like Kajima is like one of the giant in construction industry. They
mm,
they are the one who basically introduced Away to Built World. So for
mm,
us, it was like a really amazing experience basically because
mm.
every single company there had like so much potential and like such an amazing list of products basically you had there, right? So
Yeah.
it was a great experience for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad we had that experience so we were able to meet in person. And now we have this conversation, which then leads to your time now to show us what you're working on and what is Avete all about. If you would like to, please do share your screen.
Sure. First, I wanted to tell about our interaction basically. So we met in the
Sure.
build rate.
Yeah.
I was basically mesmerized by what you are doing in the because like one of the thing we as like entrepreneur we struggle with
Mm,
is since we are in a very niche industry, a lot of the
mm,
time our potential clients they don't really know the machine learning and the impact of it, right? So you as someone who already are sort of like teaching the industry and moving it forward, that
Hmm.
to me is very fascinating because that made our life a lot easier, right? So
I know what
so
you mean.
yeah, right. For example, if we go to other countries, if they have, if all the site engineers, like civil engineers
Hmm.
they already know about the potential
Hmm.
of AI, how it can be used in their industry,
Yeah.
because they might know the word of AI, right? Like that's very common thing, but
Yeah.
they might not know like how it can potentially help them. So
Exactly.
that work that you are doing, that was really amazing. So for us, like that was really fascinating point to bring on, right?
Thanks
And
for
then
raising that. Yeah, I can see, I can feel what you mean because the thing is, if they don't understand the value, then
Mhm.
there's still a barrier for them to actually implement the kinds of technologies that they need. So there needs to be ground laying process and onboarding or the primer, before they can actually go into transformation and implementation of AI. First, they need education on a universal, systemic scale, which isn't easy to do, but
yeah,
definitely is one of our ambitions.
it's definitely not an easy thing to do because I personally have my own struggles. Before starting Avete,
Mm.
I was working for Ando, one of the largest construction company in Japan, and they basically handpicked me out of university because they wanted to do something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very like, like in Japan, we have a very standardized way of interviews and process. But my
Yeah,
process,
they do.
I was basically invited for like wine, drinking, because they wanted to know me as a person more than just
Mm.
it. It was very
Great.
fascinating, yes. And the top brass of the company, like in Japanese, like Sacho, basically the CEOs and like big players of the companies, they were really fascinated by AI. And this is something I'm telling you about like 6 years ago, before ChatGPT era, basically. And
Okay.
when you come down the stream, when you go to actual construction sites where people are basically working like 6, 7 days every week, so they might not have
Mm.
breaks in between, right? They're working multiple shifts. They might not be very interested in having this new technology come into their picture. And because from day one, it doesn't become useful to them, right? And there is always a learning curve to things. So
Mm.
now what's happening with like the platform like yours, the platform like in general, like more education towards AI, what's happening is our potential customers or our potential users, which are the actual site people who are working in the construction sites,
Right.
they become very more knowledgeable about this topic. So this
Mm.
is something I struggled with in my own experience as well. That's why I love like what you guys are doing here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really think that 2026 is going to be the year where everyone is a bit more aware of the language in
Yeah.
terms of when we're talking about how this algorithms is going to create tangible or intangible benefits. What does it actually mean? And so therefore we can get things going.
Yeah, perfect. Coming back to our solution and like what we are basically trying to develop, let me share
Mm,
my screen very quickly.
great. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. So basically, what we are trying to do is we are trying to make construction sites safer, smarter, and faster. Actually, like just take the case of Japan. In Japan, there was a huge amount of push from the government, be it monetary as well as the human labor push as well, to promote the digitalization. And then COVID played a huge role in that as well. So what happened after is like most of the construction sites, they became very common or used to on using the CCTV cameras, the body cameras, like mobile phone applications in the construction site, which was not the case before. But with that, what's happening, like of course, they became good in digitalization, and now you have a lot of data of construction sites. But the problem that occurred from that is they're being used in a very reactive manner. So like they have like for example, we visited one construction site where they have 20 cameras all the time, and they don't really check those ever. Like they check it maybe once sometime, like if there is an accident or there is some big trouble, security reason or safety reason, then they basically check it. So but what we are trying to do is make it more proactive rather than being reactive. So in that way, what happens is, for example, if you take a daily basis of like video cameras, CCTV cameras from the construction sites, and you put that into our system, what happens is we basically highlight the type of activities being going on, the probable safety risks that can lead to a potential accidents, right? And how you can use that data to train your construction workers and how you can use that data to potentially make them more efficient, making the entire process a bit faster. So that's the channel we are basically working on it. So for us, it was very important to make the entire platform hardware agnostic because they already have very expensive set of cameras. They already have very expensive set of drone videos as well in the construction site. So of course they're not too keen on paying for that, but they're not using that data. So that's where we come in. So from the safer perspective, basically, this is something it works. So we don't just detect the construction sites. We don't just see like, okay, someone is working wearing the helmet or someone is not wearing the helmet. We basically analyze the work itself. So for example, if someone is working on the crane video, we analyze how the crane should be operated when it comes to the compliance, when it comes to regulations, Japanese industries. And then we basically check for those things. So for example, if you are picking a load, how the load should be lifted. It should be weight. There should be a wait of like 3 seconds when you're lifting the weight, and so that it's like you're basically sure that everything is working properly. And then how the ground condition should be. Should there be a steel plate if the ground condition is softer? If there are loads of like, then there should be a light that should illuminate that part as well. So we're basically analyzing all these things and we're extending it all to different varieties of construction work, be it the indoor work or outdoor work, basically in the construction sites. And then you basically like the work that are being done by in the construction sites, those are done by subcontractors, right? But the main contractors are the main in charge of the entire process. So we basically take that entire input footage, we turn into a meaningful data, and we give a glimpse of it as like a summary of it to the safety managers, to the site engineers who are from the main contractors. So they basically can decide how to make the improvement in the construction sites. That becomes like very useful part. And of course, like since we have the same data, now the next thing you can do is, okay, if you are keep facing some safety issues, how to actually improve upon that. So for that, we have introduced in Japan, there's a concept of a KY, which called Kenyochi. It basically means like hazard prediction training. And we wanted to make it in multiple language. We wanted it to be in Japanese, in English, like in different languages basically across. And this is mostly focused for different subcontractors that are in the construction sites and their own workers. So from the site video data, from the list of previous accidents and like other understanding of the construction site, we basically prepare the schedule for the construction workers. And based on the schedule, we basically analyze how should we train them more effectively. That's where the smarter component of our platform comes in. And then the third platform is basically for how to make the entire process faster. So now you basically have all this bunch of data and you can basically have your own like schedule reports, manuals and everything. Rather than actually looking through this 500 pages of manual, you can just ask, because this you have basically this all-knowing construction platform in your fingertips. So you can basically, we call it like Gemini for construction, basically. You can use that as well. So we are basically trying to combine this platform and make the construction site like safer, smarter and faster. That's the sort of idea that we're building towards. Yes, that's basically our product. And one very interesting thing I wanted to mention, which is very common, not just in Japan, but across the world, is most of the time when you have an accident, like you never have enough data to train your model, right, for the accident. That's why we have introduced the system of like zero shot generation and few shot adoption method, where we basically take the safe condition of the construction site and we basically take the guidelines and the text that needs to be the compliance checklist that needs to be created, and based on that we basically create our own set of risk data that we use to train our machine learning model. The fascinating thing I wanted to tell you is in the very first slide, the image that I showed you, this video, this is completely generated using our AI, because it's impossible in Japan to go to a construction site and find so many red flags in a single location, right? So we basically took the base image of crane as the construction site, and we basically had the guidelines to check. And then based on that, we generated the video that can highlight the risks. And we basically train our model to understand it a lot more effective. So that's basically our product journey. And we are currently working with a lot more construction companies in Japan on free trial basis, on paid, like single site paid plan as well. And we're planning that in next 1 year, we are going to expand a lot more within Japan, and then we will expand to other countries as well.
Thank you so much for showing us that. I think it is very good use of AI, and I say it in a very broad sense. The reason why I say this is because A, it's hardware agnostic. You're not trying to get anyone to buy new hardware, so it's kind of lightweight in that sense. And secondly, you are also training your model by using the synthetic videos, synthetic footage. So it lowers your obstacles in creating your AI model.
Yes, yes, yes. So basically, there is a really famous magazine in Japan called Nikkei Construction. They covered about us few months ago, basically. And then we got several calls from a lot of companies in Japan about like to know about our product. But like Japan being very conservative, especially like the construction industry being very conservative, a lot of them, we basically ended the call in a way that, like this is a really good product. Let's stay in touch. We want to
Mm,
definitely use it in the future, but not immediately, right? Like we didn't have any situation like, okay, from tomorrow on, we will start using. Like there was from a month, from 2 months, something like that, we will
mm,
start using. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, I was
mhm,
traveling in a train and I get a call from someone and they're like, oh, I'm like this from this like giant of a construction company in Japan. And they're like, no, 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 we want to start your product from as soon as possible. Can you visit our construction site as soon as you can?
mm.
Because there was an accident, right?
Oh,
Yeah. So because there was an accident, now they wanted to basically start utilizing our product as quickly as possible because we are the platform that help construction sites prevent accidents. And they surprisingly
mm,
already had huge amount of CCTVs, body cameras, everything in the construction site. And
mm.
so basically that sort of gave us a huge push on market validity. Like what we are making is actually
Yeah,
matching with the user base, right? So yeah, that's
right.
what we've been doing for past like 1 year, basically.
Got it. That phone call that you got when you were on the train, they called you to start wanting to use AVETE after the accident, not because there could be anything else to be done about the accident itself, but they want to immediately take on like a remedial solution. Is that what I'm
So
understanding?
so basically, like their initial understanding was that we have all these cameras. So of
Mm,
course we can like someone is checking those videos, someone is looking into these feeds, and they will prevent the accident. But
mhm.
the reality was that even with all this data, no one is actually looking at them.
Yeah,
So
it's just impossible to look at it
exactly right. So
all those
then
hours.
yeah, but actually, like, like Japanese people are very hardworking. It's very normal for them to actually be very, very detail oriented about some things, right? So if they have a culture
Absolutely. Yeah.
data, they will be looking. But as you said, it's impossible because that site had construction work going on for 6 days a week,
Mm,
almost 20 hours every day. So
mm,
yeah, yeah. So then it
right.
was difficult for them to check the data. So basically, they were like, okay, this is the platform that can really help because
Yeah.
before that, they already did the trials. They were basically understanding the product.
Mm,
So when the time
right.
came, they
I
were, this
see. I see.
help us.
So you already have met them once, but the push for them to actually subscribe or to
Yeah.
start collaboration was when there really had been an accident. And of course, we never hope for accidents to happen, but that seems to be the lead in to the success of your product.
Yes, in future, I would definitely want it, like people should start using this before something happens,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, but
Yeah.
that kind of what we wanted to basically understand was the market fit. Like, do they really need a product like this?
Mm,
Or, because in Japan, as I mentioned, Japan is very like detail oriented companies and everyone is very hardworking. So
mm,
the full understanding that we were thinking could be the case was, okay, maybe they are actually looking at all this data, and this is
right.
our
I see what you mean.
that they might not be looking at it, but basically like what that accident proved
Mm,
was, oh, no, that's not the case. There's
mm.
actually a real demand for a product like this.
I see. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, technologically it's fantastic, but you still want the confidence that actually there is such a need, and in the past year has been proven to you. Got it.
Ex-
You know me, I'm very fascinated about different kinds of marketing strategies, especially in our niche. So it does sound as though that you can perhaps get the news of different incidents or accidents that's happening in Japan. And when they do happen, you can approach them, or it could be the second time for you to approach them to remind them of your solution when those incidents happen. Not that, again, not that we wish for anything to happen, but those would probably be the most appropriate moments to push them to opt in. I recently had a conversation with a former enforcer from the government level who had been telling me about her experience in doing enforcements at construction sites. She basically was the inspector at many construction sites. And she also explained to me how reactive the contractors are in terms of when something happens, when the government gets involved, or when there's an incident, then they will have the most amount of motivation to do something. Before that, perhaps not a lot.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
the truth.
It makes sense. But in Japan, like what we are doing is like a bit of a bit of a different approach, which is basically government regularization. So in Japan, our product is being certified by this government body, so called NETIS. It's like new technology innovation system
Mm,
organized, and it gets handled by METI, which is like a Japanese government ministry organization, basically.
mhm,
So they are currently certifying our product on construction safety, basically, and I think
mm,
that was like a lot bigger push, because now if a company sees us, they can be like, okay, this is a certified product that is actually useful for us to
mm.
use.
Yeah,
That's
got it.
definitely one where.
So you already support it and it can be top-down impacts. That's great. And another aspect I could think of is that Japan is definitely an aging population, and each single person, individual worker that they have to find on site will be a commercial burden to the contractors or subcontractors. So if there could be anything that could ease that workforce, the workload, of course it should be welcomed.
Yeah, so actually, like I like from customers, there's always like some fascinating stories. Another story I got from another customers was like they were not a typical general contractor. They were more like a construction consulting sort of companies. And they're like, actually, we have a very long-term training program for our construction engineers or like our civil engineers. They basically have like 10, 15 years of
Mm,
training, basically. And they're saying like our engineers who are like basically 5 years experience or 6 years experience, they're basically spending 50 to 60% of their work time on finding and searching for documents that they are going to use to make the program, which in this day and age sounds like, especially with the aging population, because now you have older population who are not so keen on going to construction site as much, like the one who actually have all the experience, they are not visiting the construction sites as often, and the younger
mm, yeah.
who are visiting the construction sites and the foreign construction workers who are visiting the construction sites, they might not have enough experience. So how to bridge the gap is something that we are also targeting within our AVETE platform.
That's spot on, and you definitely know your market very well. Speaking of the other countries that you'd like to expand to beyond Japan, what are some of the other countries that you have in mind?
Okay, so basically, Japanese organization like JETRO, they have selected AVETE to go to Singapore and Malaysia in next year to expand our product, because they also have very similar set of problems when it comes to worker training, when it comes to safety, when it comes to compliance and health monitoring of the construction sites. And then other than that, of course, the entire Middle East, be it Saudi Arabia, UAE, they also have very similar set of challenges. And European market is also very fascinating, because European market is in like, especially when you talk about like Germany, when you talk about Austria, France, they have very similar set of regulations as in Japan. If something goes wrong, the government organization basically pushes the company too much. Like, for example, in Japan, if there is an accident in a construction site, they might ask you not to bid for a new project for a certain period of time, which is
Oh,
horrible.
yes.
They have similar set of regulations in Europe as well.
They simply can't afford those accidents. They need to
Then
take all kinds of measures.
and then Middle East to me is super fascinating market, because there you basically have people coming from different groups. It's not like the people who are native and who have the same sort of civil engineering knowledge who are coming to the construction site. You basically have people coming from different ethnicity, different background, different sort of like knowledge base to come to the construction site and build the product. And actually, like when last time when we were discussing, you mentioned to me that Middle East is a market where people are more interested on if you can actually save money for the company, right? Because of course, as a corporate world, it comes down to that, right?
Exactly.
Through our platform, one thing we can do very well is health monitoring of the product. Like if you're building something, if you're building rebars, if you're using crane machineries in the construction site, how effectively the product itself is coming out, right? Like we're not just checking for helmets and gears, right? As you saw in the example, we're checking like if you're operating the crane, how the surrounding, how the regulations should be with that. And when we're done building it, we can analyze how the health of that product. If you're designing a rebar, how is that coming up, right? So that becomes a very fascinating thing for us in Middle East. And then how to have that entire data going to the main contractor so that they can take important steps on improving the construction efficiency. So
Makes
that's
sense.
something for Middle East is like very fascinating to me. And we are definitely looking to expand in those areas in the coming future.
And we're equally interested in helping you to do that.
Thank you
So,
very much.
would you be able to also share a bit more on the entrepreneurial side of your business in terms of how you found your investors? We already know your origin story and your ambition starting from the lab of your university. How did you find the right kind of investments, and how did you get the support of the government to get the whole thing kickstarted? And also, how are the companies now collaborating with you on in terms of the commercial side?
Okay, damn, that's like so many questions at once. Let me go one by one. When it comes to the like finding the right sort of structure and investors, the first very important thing is finding the right team. And Avete is basically made from two centerpieces, basically. One is like me as a CEO who understands a lot more about computer vision, a lot more about machine learning and civil engineering. And then we have the experience of Koike, Mr. Koike, who is basically our advisor and sales consultant of Avete as well. He brings in 40 years of certified safety engineer and civil engineering background to the construction, from the construction industry to Avete. So that team becomes a very very unique team when you talk about this industry. And we basically already come equipped with certain connection, be it the construction associations in Japan, be it the large construction companies in Japan. We already have certain set of connections in those industries because we have spent a lot more time working in the construction sites, understanding the market, and actually building the actual stuff. So, and then when it comes to the investment part, we got funded by Antler, Japan.
Amazing.
Yeah, Antler is very fascinating journey itself because Antler has this like 10 weeks of program in Tokyo where if you have an idea, you basically go to the program and they sort of like validate your idea, make it more pitchable, right? Because that's something I didn't really know. Like I knew how to talk to the construction engineers, I knew how to talk to the site workers and like foremen, but I didn't know how to actually pack it in a way that is more interesting to investors. Because like some things, for example, how a crane should operate or like how much of the site budget goes to the safety, that's something we all take for granted because we are in the industry, but investors do not know that, right? So Antler's 10-week program basically prepares us a lot more in that, how to make our pitch deck a lot more ready, how to do the market analysis, understanding more in terms of the monetary number. And then they select few of the companies from that program to fund. So that's how we got funded from Antler. And then after that, like Japanese organizations have like several programs. So for example, like Construction Association in Japan, if they select you, they have so many programs of their own. So for example, a month ago, we pitched to top 50 Japanese construction companies. They are basically sitting in the same roof, and we presented about Abeti. So that's how we get in touch with the construction associations and a lot more companies at once. And then government organizations are also, it's actually the startup ecosystem in Japan is very small. So once you live in that ecosystem for like a year, you already sort of know all the people, all the people who are in charge of like certain things. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
when I'm from India, the startup ecosystem is a lot more bigger there. So you
Mm,
might know
okay.
people who are, but in Tokyo, I almost know what organizations handle what component when it comes to the
Mm,
grants, the research budgets,
right.
the market and other things. Yes. And then
Yeah.
Accelerator helps in that as well.
Great. Thank you for painting a picture for us in terms of the world in Japan, the very specific world that you're in Japan. So how do your clients now work together with you?
Basically, right now, the clients that we have, they have like one certain set of problem,
Mhm.
be it for safety, be it for smart construction, basically. And they use the platform, but on top of that, they basically have few customization that are required for
Sure.
us. So for example, our current system, our base platform is basically made based on the Japanese compliance and regulations. And
Mm,
a lot of companies, they basically have their own compliance, their own regulations on top of that. So they
right.
want to incorporate that as well. So that's how they basically have. And then like some of the other companies, they are also stuck in the first phase of the digitization itself. So for example, their
Mm,
own compliance data, their own regulation data, their own like previous accidents data, basically the reports that they have, those are not well digitalized. So using our same
mm.
pipeline of Kensho AI, basically, we provide them a bit more digitalized platform before actually using those same document for the safety and compliance check. So
So
it's a
got
bit
it.
of
Yeah,
customer.
yeah. That's for sure. It must be, especially with B2B, there of course is onboarding and a bit of handholding. Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. And could we also know if it's often project based or is it like a monthly retainer, just in case someone is interested in contacting you immediately to start using something? How does it actually work?
So our SaaS platform is basically monthly subscription-based model. So
Mm,
even though you might use your data for improvements, like for improvements for you, it's still part of the monthly SaaS platform. On top
mm,
of that, we do handle very specific case of if it's something completely, for example, like shield tunnels. So shield tunnels are basically the tunnels that are being used like Shinkansen, like bullet trains or like maglev trains in Japan.
right.
They have very different set of safety checks and compliance check and regulations
Oh, really? Okay.
because it's actually very small confined space, right? And the
Mm,
basic machine. So for example, one thing that they generally
interesting.
is they have a big trolley, and that trolley needs to take a lot of stuff from the entrance of the tunnel to where the
Mm,
construction is being done right now, and
right,
sometimes
right.
to cases of accidents when the trolley is moving. So for that
Mm,
they have a real-time system that can analyze in that confined space, which is kind
right.
of like autonomous driving, but
Yeah,
given that it becomes a lot more trickier and challenging.
yeah. I see
So,
what
so
you
those
mean.
products, yeah, those kind of products, they come into our like customized enterprise plan as well.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So if AVETE goes beyond Japan and goes to Malaysia, Singapore, or the Middle East, I assume there would be the local code that needs to be trained into the model as well.
Yes. And that's something that actually we already designed it within the platform because we
Okay.
knew from the beginning itself that other than the Japanese compliance regulations, company might have their own compliance. And then
Mm,
if we go to another country, another country might have their own regulations and compliance set of things as well as the progress monitoring things as well. So we already designed the system in that way. So it
mm,
can
got
definitely
it.
handle in very customized and very scalable manner.
Nice. So you already planned ahead how you were going to scale the business from the beginning. That makes sense. So while I ask the next couple of questions, I do invite the audience to ask any of your questions. Please feel free to ask in the chat. And my next query is, I'm just very curious, since you speak the language in India, would you consider, also growing your market there?
Yes, India is a fascinating market. It's a huge market
Mhm.
base, and yeah, language. I think we have like more than 30 languages that are being used in a very bigger sort of areas, not like just small regional dialects.
Hmm.
So having the model sort of handle those different languages is definitely a challenging part. And
Mm,
Avete of Google for Startup program in Japan as well. So we are working closely with the Google models as well on how we can have the construction industries different language code base being handled with them as well. So we are not immediately considering Indian market, but definitely in the coming
mm,
future with more capabilities with the different languages and different dialects being handled, we will basically
mm.
consider the market as well.
Sure. Yeah, India is definitely fascinating. Me personally, I did have some business there in the past, and it's definitely very fascinating and their own set of rules and culture as well. So I would say it's also a very different world to tap into.
Yes, it's very
Yeah, it's very different.
we're basically Avete is also trying to collaborate with insurance companies,
Interesting.
and that's the angle actually we see a huge potential in India. Not
Oh,
just from the perspective of contractors, but more because all the sites are insured, and our
mm,
platform it gives an ability to the insurance companies to understand
yeah.
how the compliance and how the regulations are being followed.
Hmm.
So that's some
Construction insurance.
yes,
Interesting.
so that's the area where I see construction could be like in India, it could be a good market for
That
us.
makes sense. Maybe not only in India, perhaps
Exactly.
everywhere else as well. Yeah, that could be another stream of revenue, another whole other target market and whole other whole other groups of stakeholders that you can speak to about that. So it's great. That's great perspective. I'm learning something new. So I always ask this question, and for those who are recurring audience, they would know what I want to ask. What is success for you if you have to describe it in one word?
Success is, to me, it's basically like solving a problem that actually impacts someone on a day-to-day life. That's to me, basically like if you can do that, you can consider yourself like successful. Right?
Amazing. So would that word be problem solving with a hyphen?
Yes, it could be that. Yes. Because I mean, actually, like this entire world got developed because of that, right? There's always like some amazing human being you basically decided to solve a specific problem. And that's how the entire like current world got designed, right? So, yeah. So for me, like that's how I define success. If I can solve a legitimate problem, that people are having, I would consider myself very successful.
So problem solving.
Yes, problem solving.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, we have a nice question in the chat from Winston. Thank you so much. I'm going to read it out for everyone. Really like these AI tools. I just wanted to ask a few things as I think the UK construction industry could certainly use these. Just so I understand the AI correctly, AVETE AI, I think that's what he is trying to say, is able to monitor live procedures on construction and safety concerns. Do you think this could be done for quality control, such as method of construction and checking if workers are attempting to shortcut procedures? If so, would this monitoring system be accessible to architects to also review? I think this can allow architects to have assurance on design control and safety of the workers. What do you
Oh,
think?
really good question, basically. And yeah, I got this question before as well from someone from UK as well. So this is sort of
Interesting.
the same problem. Yes,
UK question.
UK question, right? So basically, yes, because as you saw in the demo, we are not basically trying to highlight the safety concerns. We're also trying to highlight the methodology of the process itself. Right. So that
Mm,
can definitely be used in when you talk about the quality control or like health
mm,
checkup the construction sites basically. So it's definitely on the cards. Or from our side, all we have to do is create a certain set of checklists that we
mm,
need, like what sort of when you talk about the quality control on like let's say concrete,
mm.
right? So when you're doing the concrete pouring, do you actually take care of the temperature, the weather around it, and like how the concrete pouring is happening, like from what area to what area it's covering? We can definitely do that within the platform as well. Yes.
That's great. Before I read out the next question, and thank you so much for these fantastic questions, I want to share that I used to work in a contractor, and there used to be a method statements engineer specifically to work on methods, like how things get stacked up, how the logistics of things. which sub-consultant is working with which supplier, and he then works with the programmer, not the kind of developer programmer, but the planning engineer, the planning programming. And if I have so much respect for them. However, I see that they work in such a manual way and also a more like a static way. Like they can only plan for one frame of the procedure of the time. They can only predict one scenario. Maybe they have a plan B, but that's it. They're limited to the knowledge that they have, or they're limited to, how much they can do manually. So I don't know if in the future could AVETE be somehow helping to counter propose certain things or even to simulate certain things. The video you showed us looked so real that I don't think a lot of people will actually doubt, would actually know that it is AI. But perhaps it could then help to reverse engineer what the method should actually be after the machine learning has been performed and it has enough data to actually counter propose. I don't know, just thinking out loud.
Definitely interesting take. Basically, I totally understand why people in the construction sites are a lot more manual as of now, because
Mm,
the machine learning itself so far had never been worked so well that it's
mm,
working right now, right? Even now,
mm,
like, it has its limitation, but for the
yeah.
most part, it is working really well, right? That was not the case before. And
I agree. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Please go. I will say something later, but please keep going.
if you are doing the web, like let's say you're doing a web design, right? You're creating a website page or whatever. If something AI does something wrong, it doesn't really impact much, right? But
Mm,
if it happens in a dam or in a bridge construction, it can be very costly, be it monetary, be it live, right? So that's why they rely
mm.
a lot more on the manual process. But as the machine learning, as the AI becomes better over time, reliance will definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. I think it is understandable in such ways. And you're right that actually most machine learning projects do not succeed. It is the truth. Above 90% of them do not succeed. And there are all kinds of different barriers and systems and different factors that make that happen. But those who succeed will become unicorns and they actually work so well. Like UPS delivery, FedEx, like that is, a successful case, but it's true, not all cases succeed. And you're right that if something goes wrong, the cost is devastating.
What
Right.
few
Yes. Thank you, Leo Rick. In terms of the neural network design, wow, very technical. How adaptive and predictive is the system when planning for the future? Adaptation of emerging technologies such as robotics and autonomous drones. How is the step-by-step process of AI augmentation and human-robot collaboration managed over time? Furthermore, how are predictive algorithms structured at a computational level to support adaptive planning and decision making? We got some very quality audience here. Uttam, hope you can handle that.
Yes. Basically, as of now, the system is not 100% AI. It's not just like everything is. There are a lot more. We have done a lot more research on the guideline selections, on the set of, different scenarios identification, and we have done a lot more manual understanding of those that we have converted into the database for AVETE. When it comes to the autonomous drone and robotics part in the future adoption, actually very interesting. Like, so most of the robotics companies and most of the like drone, actually one of the construction site, basically they had this problem statement given to us that we have drones in our construction sites. They fly at a certain time every day and they collect these different areas of the construction site. It's a huge, very large sort of construction project, and we want to do the analysis. But the drone company doesn't do that, right? Drone companies don't. They are in charge of making the drones. They're not really in charge of making the construction site specific drones, right? So their question was, can we basically tap your system and input that drone video data and get the analysis of it, so that we can basically see how the progress, how the quality, how the compliance gets done over time. So that's something we are considering within the platform. However, the human robot collaboration part and AI augmentation part, that is still a very fascinating and very challenging thing to do in a construction site, because construction sites are, they're very different and very difficult sort of environments. You can think of it as like Like for example, autonomous driving on paper sounded very simple. If you can basically do a road detection, you can basically have the car sort of drive itself. But once you start doing it more in the actual use cases, you start to see there are like so many challenges. The lines can be changed based on the shadow coming from the sun, and then like how to handle it from the camera data. Same sort of problems at a much bigger scale happen in the construction site. Because when you talk
Mm.
about the stairs in the construction, for example, right, the stairs are not like proper stairs. They're like robots can climb very easily. Even if you have like Boston Dynamic robots, for example, which
Right.
there is a company in Japan that are trying to build a product on top of Boston Dynamics robotics, but they cannot really climb those because those are very confined sort of spaces, and it's very difficult for them to sort of handle it. And the biggest problem in that, which is the human robot collaboration part, is the operator is not in the construction site. The entire point is to make it autonomous, right? If something goes wrong, like for example, if your robot doesn't climb at a certain point, what to do then? You
Mm.
have like this 15-story building, it gets stuck on the second floor. What happens now? Now, does the construction worker who is already really busy in
Mm.
in an area, now does he basically now take care of that task or not? So that's why this question is still a lot more challenging to answer at this point. But
Mm.
definitely coming into the future, we are moving a lot towards making robotics a lot better, making machineries a lot better that can basically have a component of AI within those machineries as well. So definitely it can be better over time, but as of now, it is a very challenging question to sort of answer.
Very forward-thinking question. Thank you so much. And Winston, also thank you for your answer. And he's mentioning that in the UK, perhaps that is a universal problem they're waiting to
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, this is perfect timing. I think this is the time that we have today with the time, and we're so lucky to have you with us. And thank you so much for spending your time with us in your late evening in Japan. And thank you so much, really, like for this very, I learned a lot today. And so thank you so much for this conversation and wishing you best of luck and Happy New Year as well.
Thank you very much. This was really amazing talk. I loved
Mhm.
the futures. The questions were really amazing.
I agree.
Arranging this Happy New Year to you as well, and all for joining the call as well. Thank you.
Yes, and we shall continue our discussion offline in terms of our growth, mutual growth together. So thank you so much.
Looking forward to that. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Good night.